This presentation is going to be the shop control. It's going to be broken into two parts. So first, I'll speak about some of the new enhancements. And then Ryan is going to also speak about some of the enhancements and how he's implemented them at Piedmont Aviation. All right. So just a quick who am I? I'm Sean Polly. I'm a trainer with Component Control. I've been with the company since 2005. Started in technical support and started doing some phone training, some on-site training, and now I'm one of the implementation specialists. So primarily going on-site and implementing new customers, but although I also do some training and follow-up training with existing customers. All right. So as I mentioned, shop control. Just a quick thing about shop control. If anyone here is not using it, it's used for the repair tracking of components. So if you are a repair station, you would use the shop control module to track the labor, to track the bill of material usage, the tracking of usage of tools. And also, printing out certifications, whether it be an 8130, Form 1. So the shop control module is used to facilitate that activity. All right. So some of the new features that we're going to talk about today, we've made some changes to the generic BC executable, and I'll talk more about what that executable does and how it's used, and the new features that we've added to the program. We'll also look at the quick update features we've added to the global menu. So this is a feature that's existed for some time in different parts of the program, and we've added some of the functionality directly within the work orders. We've also got some quick update features for work order tasks. And we'll also look at some of the new certification options for printing the 8130s for bill of materials, specifically turn-in items. And we've also got some new features for the work order templates. So there's some new enhancements to the template features. And lastly, one of the newer features that is currently in development is a teardown work order process. So you'll see that we've added some features for teardown work orders. And we'll get into what those features are going to look like. All right. So the first thing, there's a generic bc.exe. It's an application that's part of the barcoding module. So at one point, the generic BC executable was used primarily for labor tracking. So you would clock on to a task, you would clock off of a task using the wired USB scanners. It's different than the RF executable that some of you might be using with the Worth data scanners. The generic BC uses a wired or a keyboard emulator. So one of the new enhancements that we've done with the generic BC executable, we've created an INI file that allows you to double-click on the application and auto-log in. So at one time, you would have to type in a user account and log in with a user and password. However, now in this INI file, you can auto-log in. And although I've got the heading labeled here as generic BC, this functionality also applies for the TA barcode entry executable, which is used for time and attendance. So anyone that's using time and attendance, the TA barcode entry, you'll be familiar with that. It's used for clocking in for the day, clocking out for the day, and in and out from lunch. All right, so this presentation, like the other presentation, is going to be available for download. I've done two things here. I've actually embedded a sample INI file in the presentation, so you'll be able to save that INI file. There's an object in the slide, And I've also copied the format of the INI file. So you can see it's labeled, the title of the file is labeled genericbc.ini. And it has to be in this particular syntax. So we've got the layout here of the file. You've got the DB, the schema name, so QCTL in this example. I think most of your databases are probably titled QCTL for the Oracle schema name. Then you have the encrypted password, and that's actually just copied and pasted from dblocks. So if you're familiar with the dblocks file, that's the database connection file that lists the names of your database locations. So I've copied and pasted the encrypted password from that file into this INI document. And then also finally the Oracle instance. And then lastly, the user account that you want to use for the executable. So I've used sysdba here. Depending on your requirements, you may want to use a different account. I know sometimes companies show that they've got multiple sysdba accounts logged in, and that can raise some red flags if someone actually has the password. But oftentimes companies just create a generic account with no rights to the application. All it's used for is to log in to the executable, whether it be generic BC or TA barcode. Right? So this file is actually placed in the same directory as the executable. So, in most instances, generic BC is going to be on the server share, on your server, so the quantum share on the server. You would place this file in there with the details I've specified. And when you double-click on the application, it will auto-log in, and you can begin the entry process for the different functions that exist in the program. So that's the first enhancement I was going to discuss. The other part of this is, I believe in 10.3 there is a reconnection utility. So if generic BC or TA barcode entry is disconnected, if that machine, that terminal is disconnected from the network, there's actually a utility for it to reattempt to connect. So if you lose network connectivity on one of the kiosks for labor recording, it will reconnect on its own and bring up the interface so your technicians can, again, begin using the application. All right. The second enhancement to the generic BC utility is we've integrated some options to check out and check tools back in. So previously, the functions here existed for the wireless device. So if you're using the shop control module and you want to track the usage of your calibrated tools, you can do that directly within this utility now. So you print out the standard barcode label that exists for one of these calibrated tool stock lines. And all this is probably not the best screenshot, but you would scan the tool control number, control ID. You can scan the employee, and you can also scan the supervisor, although it's not required. And then finally, you would scan the task in which this tool is going to be applied. So I know that certain agencies want to track your usage of calibrated tools. For example, a torque wrench, you want to see the work orders in which it was used. So this is going to allow you to do that within the generic barcode executable. You can also do it within the UI, but this makes it a little bit faster when you're scanning the barcodes on the tools directly. So the tooling functions, as I mentioned, you can check out a tool. You can check a tool back in from usage. So if it's being returned to the central tool crib, you'll be able to scan the item, check it back into the system. You can actually transfer a tool, which is a different feature. This is something new we've added to this utility, you can transfer a tool to another user. So if you've got one technician that's using a torque wrench, someone comes in on the second shift and they're going to continue using it, they can quickly go to this executable and transfer that tool to a different individual. And then lastly, although it's not done within this interface, if you're using the TA barcode entry for time and attendance, there is a check-in validation when you clock out for the day. So if you've got a tool assigned to you, currently checked out, and you attempt to clock out for the day, there is a message that will pop up within the TA barcode entry screen that will notify you that you have a tool, and it will not let you check out unless you receive supervisor's authorization. So there's actually an override in the TA barcode entry screen. All right, so those are, again, all enhancements that have been done to the tooling tab of the generic barcode executable. The next thing that we've done with the generic barcoding program, we've included the ability to update both work order header status, and just recently we've added the ability to update task status codes. So depending on the way that you process work orders, I know some companies heavily use the work order header status to track certain visibility, but you can also change the task status with the device now as well. So you would scan your employee ID, and depending on the options that you see here, there's update task status. If you have that checkbox selected, it opens up the ability to record the work order task barcode from the traveler document. But if that's unchecked, then it would require the work order number. In this example, it's grayed out. And yeah, basically you can see here there's also a new enhancement. Previously, you would have to scan the auto key of the work order status that you want to apply. The developers have added a drop-down. So in this listing, you'll actually have a drop-down for the task code. So there's a task status drop-down from within this user interface. And as I was putting this presentation together, I was speaking to one of the developers, and actually there is some brand new work being done, which I don't believe will be out until 10.5, but that's actually this next screen. And on the generic barcoding executable, there is the interface is actually going to change slightly than what we just got to see on the previous slide here. So you've got a radio selection that will exist for the update. And there's now a third option for updating different details on this status tab. So the two that we've mentioned, the work order status and the task status, but this listing is also going to provide the ability to update a task work center. So with the barcoding device, you have the ability to scan your employee, the work order task if you have the radio button set for task or work center. And then again, the drop down. So you have the drop down for the value that you want to apply to the task record, whether it's work center or the task. Depending on the radio buttons, the drop down will change. All right. So continuing with the generic BC enhancements, we've done some touchscreen integration here. So the labor recording tab, you'll see that we've changed this interface around a little bit. It will allow you to clock on a task and clock off of a task. But the approach here is slightly different. The first thing that you can do here is scan your employee ID. And in this example, I scanned this 747 employee code. And over to the right, there's a drop-down. You can scan a work order number, or you can go to the drop-down and look for existing open work orders. And then, depending on the work order that's selected, it will show the task listing. In addition to the work order listing there, the lower segment of the window will show your previous scans. So in this example, Sean, I've clocked on to the work order that's listed there. I think it's 100,044. And I could select that task to clock on to and begin labor recording. All right, so kind of basic features here for doing that. And again, with a touchscreen compatible device, you can do this all right on the monitor. And Ryan will actually talk about some of the technologies that he's implemented to address this. The other thing that this window is going to allow you to do is batch recording. So typically with NDT, non-destructive testing, or painting, it is very common to batch tasks from the same work order or possibly various work orders. So this window is going to allow you to quickly batch tasks by using the task listing in the upper right-hand window. And then the large arrow there that's kind of in the center column, you can click on a task and push it over to the left-hand section of the window to create your batch listing. So we've got, let's say 4 tasks from a variety of different work orders. We're going to, paint all of these items. So the paint shop will come into this window, select the tasks, and create the batch record. And this window is actually dynamic in that you can add or remove task listings on the fly. So if it ever came up that you needed to add an additional task to that painting process, you can come back into this window and add an additional task or possibly remove a task from the listing. All right, so that's all, again, within the generic barcode utility, and that's specifically on the labor recording tab. All right. So I think that actually covers the various enhancements that we've done with the generic barcoding executable. All right, some of the other options that we've added to the work order system recently, we've got the quick update feature on the global menu. So prior to this, it was available on the search work order headers. And again, I know a lot of companies use the status update on the work order header for visibility purposes. And it was a little tedious to go in there and search work order headers and type in the work order number just to get to that quick update feature. So now you've got that ability directly within the work order. And I've referenced the status. However, the quick update feature does much more than just changing the status of the work order header. You can see on the drop down there we have the ability to change the work order status, the ability to change the part number, the main component. Typically if there was a mistake made at the receiving process. You can change the serial number of the main component, the due date, the station, and the ranking of the work order. Right, so I think that's a nice feature. It definitely removes some of the keystrokes out of updating those details. We've also added a quick update feature for the tasks. So for those of you that are familiar with the bill of material quick update, there is a screen very similar to this for adding and managing the bill of material records on a work order. So we've added on the task menu from the work order record, we've created this quick update option, and at the moment you can update the sequence of the task and also the work center of the task. So the quick update feature will provide those two update capabilities. All right. Next, we've also added the ability to print 8130s for bill of materials with a turn-in disposition. So if you're familiar with that concept, bill of materials are dispositioned with various different options on the work order records. One being turn-in. Basically, you're removing something from the transaction and going to put that into your inventory, and there's no requirement to replace that item on the work order transaction. So if you're doing something, say, like a bag and tag, a tear down for a component that you purchased, piecing it out, you might want to print some sort of certification, upon visual inspection of the item, that the technicians can process the turn-in, and then those type of bill of material entries will show on the 8130 print menu. Now, I say 8130, but if you have other base documents that use our 8130 form as the underlying form, you'll be able to print other certifications using that same area. So if you had some sort of custom document that prints a certificate of conformity or maybe a Form 1, you'd be able to use that, assuming that the base document was the 8130. All right, so just highlighted the listing there for two bill of materials with a turn-in disposition. All right. This is a new feature to the work order template header. So the template records in the Quantum system contain the work scope details, the bill of material details, labor estimates, and this is the header section. The screenshot here is the header section of that type of record. And you can see here we've got the name of the template, the part number that you're working on, if you're modifying that part number. So we've added the ability to block templates from being applied. In the lower portion of the screen, you have a block checkbox. And just to the right of it, there is a message that you can throw when a user attempts to select this template. So you've got your message in there. I've quickly just put in C quality. And if a user attempts to apply this at the work order creation stage or later on in the process, it will throw this error message. All right, and then your note will be in there as well. All right. So one of the next things that we'll talk about, we've added some enhancements to the internal work orders, and there's going to be some teardown functions, specifically for costing bill of materials that you remove out of an internal work order. The first screenshot that I have here is just listing that there's a control setting. There's a control setting to turn this function on in the system. And this is the work order module setting. So on the user drop-down, user system setup, shop control or work order. And there's a checkbox which will enable these options. So I've just highlighted that. If you have that enabled, when you open up an internal work order, there's now going to be a checkbox here to indicate that this is a teardown job. And what happens here is that when this is a teardown job, there is going to be many things in the system that are going to be restricted. So within the work order record, there are going to be restrictions on many functions on the global menu because it's going to limit the activity that can happen with the work order process. Although I don't have a screenshot of it here, but when you apply one of your existing templates, so with the teardown functions, you can actually use your existing templates. All of the bill of materials are going to default to turn-in disposition. So that is the only type of bill of material function you can use within a teardown work order, because there is going to be no requirement to issue additional parts in this scenario. All you're going to be doing is removing parts. So if you're, again, doing a bag and tag or a tear down on an engine or some other sort of roadable that you've purchased to piece out, you'll see here from this screenshot the dispositions grayed out, whether you add parts manually or, again, use one of your existing work order templates. So we've added a new screen or a new field to the bill of material record. We have, you'll see an estimated unit cost. So you can provide cost estimates for the components being removed from the work order. And there's also this fixed estimated cost feature as well. So, and I'll talk more about that in some of the function screens. So you can provide an estimate here, or you can use some of the automated features. Both of these fields are now going to be included in the work order template bill of material entry. So there is going to be an estimated unit cost field in the template, and also the fixed estimated checkbox. So essentially, you'll develop your bill of material listing, the parts that you're removing from the component. And on the quick bill of materials screen, so that's on the parts MGT menu option, parts MGT, quick BOM entry. We've got some summary details up at the top of the quick BOM screen. We've got the main component cost. This is an internal work order, so we're assuming that potentially there's going to be some cost for that component to distribute among these bill of material items. And technicians are going to have to spend time tearing down the main component, so we accumulate that into the work order, right? So with these tear down internal jobs, your technicians still can clock onto the record for tracking their labor, and potentially that labor has cost if you're defining burden rates. And we'll see that referenced in here. Also, miscellaneous costs are possible. So we summarize the total cost, and then in the quick bill of material screen, we can distribute that cost. So within this window, I could potentially choose to use the estimated cost that I entered at the bill of material screen. And then in this example on the third line item, you can see I've assumed that this is going to be $1,000 of cost for that bracket. And down in the lower portion of the screen, there's an allocate cost function. So I've got the ability to use some of these options here, and I can distribute the remaining cost from this job. And I can also distribute possibly the total cost. If I were to remove that fixed estimated cost feature, I can distribute the cost evenly over these parts on the work order record. All right. So previously in the quantum system, you could do this. You could turn in the parts and you can allocate cost. This provides some automation. Because at the end of this work order, it's actually going to adjust, assuming you've distributed all the cost out, and that is a requirement. You're going to have to distribute all of the cost on the work order and the main component out to the bill of material items. You're going to have to, or it will, automatically adjust the main component out of the system. So it will remove the cost. Physically, the main component's been torn down, and it will, again, adjust the stock line out of the system for that main component record. All right, so those are the new features that we've captured. Of course, there's work order enhancements that are being done, much more than what we've highlighted in here. But these are some of the items that we wanted to demonstrate. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Ryan to talk about how he's implemented some of these features at Piedmont.
Again, my name is Ryan Corbin with Piedmont Aviation Component Services. Piedmont Aviation Component Services was founded in 2002. We are what's left of some of the back shops of the old Piedmont Airlines. We are located in North Carolina, and our services are APU, landing gear, machining, plating, and grinding, and we do surplus part sales. We currently have about 130 employees plus on Quantum, and we went live on Quantum in 2012, and we're currently on 10.4.2.1. The first part of my presentation is the geeky portion, so those of you that don't want to listen to this can go to sleep. The rest, I'll talk about some practical things that Sean brought up. So one of the things that, one of the enhancements that's been great for us is adding the touchscreen functionality to the generic BC. What this has allowed us to do is the ability to not have to buy barcodes any longer or barcode guns any longer, right? Save on that cost. I know generally it's made up in the price of the touchscreens, but if you guys have priced them lately, they're quickly dropping and becoming very reasonable. Actually, we're picking up ELO touchscreens on the used market now in the 19-inch range for around $120, so something to think about. So our environment right now, what we've got is a Windows 2012 Hyper-V environment, and we're running RDS servers on these. I do highly recommend that you go to R2 if you are looking to install RDS in your environment, remote desktop services in your environment, for the simple reason that in Windows 2012, Microsoft took out the ability to be able to remote to a box and be able to watch what a user's doing, right? That was a great functionality for us, having to monitor remote facilities, right? What are they doing wrong? They took that out in 2012, realized it was a mistake, and put it back in R2. So being able to remote to a user and seeing what they're doing and watching them is a facility. The reason we picked running RDS over our Hyper-V instead of using VDI, which is the other virtual desktop, is just because we found that performance is better. It's faster than running VDI. VDI does give a better user experience to the user, but as far as thin clients are concerned, most don't have any clue. The other reason we went with RDS is I can publish just an app, and we'll see that in just a minute, where we publish just the generic BC touch feature barcoder to the user. So all they see when they bring up a touchscreen environment, or as we'll see in a little bit, a tablet environment, is just the touch feature in generic BC. So I'll show you that in just a minute. We use Wise thin clients throughout most of our shop. Out of the box, Wise OS, CE, Linux all have integrated with ELO. All the drivers are in there with the ELO touch. We have looked at some other monitors, touch screens in the CE environment. You can install those embedded options and things like that. At the end of the presentation, I put a link to, if you want to test out some additional touch screens besides ELO, I put the link to a Wise, how you can install in the CE environment, Windows CE Wise touchscreens, a link that you can install the drivers for other touchscreens. I put including older S10 models because since Dell bought Wise, we know what Dell does to companies. It makes them cheaper. And since Dell bought Wise, we have found that there's less memory, especially in this case, both less VRAM and system RAM in both the newer S10 models. The reason I put this specific S10 model and manufacture date of Wise thin clients is on here is, number one, we're buying these in the used market for $20 a piece. So it's a great low-cost solution. Secondly, they have more memory in them than today's models do. So you can actually load the latest Wise OS 7.1 on these, fully installed onto these models, and get all the new Wise functionality with this particular model of S10s. So the second thing that the new touch features allowed us to do in RDS is be able to use touch functionality to tablet and mobile devices. So using Microsoft's RDP client for either iPhone, Android, or Microsoft's Windows Mobile, you can now publish just the generic BC touchscreen as an app to all these devices. So what this has allowed for us to do is we have got, for instance, a remote warehouse. If somebody's working over in that remote warehouse on a work order, boxing, unboxing, work orders, cleaning, things like that, they can, via a mobile device, any mobile device pretty much nowadays, Android, iPhone, or Windows, including BlackBerry if you're still using those, through the published app, they can now log off of work orders, batch work orders. So that's an advantage now without having to actually have a connection to these facilities over 4G to any kind of mobile OS. Basically, I can log in and log off of work orders. This also can help you in a shop facility, right? Instead of buying computers now, I can publish those in a touchscreen environment over my shops to log into work orders and buy less expensive Android or tablet-based, as you can see in the top right there, an Android-based tablet throughout the shop to be able to log in, log off, and batch work orders. So another great feature that has helped us with the new generic BC is now you can log into time and attendance through the generic BC. Before, one of the great limitations we had, and I know many of you had because you brought it up to me last year, with going to time and attendance is I've got to put in another barcode or another license all over the place. And I'm having to use duplicate licenses now, one for generic BC and one for the TA barcoder. However much they are a pop, licenses, it was cost prohibitive for most of you. So what we've actually found is now using the TA barcode or using the time and attendance, there's some great functionality now we get out of the system by adding the time and attendance model. Some of those things is we can now capture actual work order costs on our work orders. So one of the great obstacles we've had in capturing actual cost on work orders, and I know many of you are also, is that mechanics just don't care, right, whether they really clocked in or off a work order, right? Oh, I forgot, sorry, made a mistake, clocked out for lunch, didn't clock back in, all those obstacles. What the time and attendance does allows that functionality now when a user logs into the time and attendance and then they forget and clock in a work order an hour later, the functionality in there moves that work order back to the time they actually clocked into the system. So how do you make them clock in a time and attendance? And that's simple. You don't get paid unless you clock in a time and attendance. Now they want to clock in a time and attendance, right? They're going to get paid by it. So adding the time and attendance functionality now gets my work order time correct. Also, one of the features in time and attendance is auto clock off for lunch periods. So no longer do they have to clock in and out of the barcoder to go to lunch. The time and attendance will clock them off the work order and back on, including batched work orders. So if they're in a batch, it will clock them off the batch and put them back on the batch when the lunch period is over with. Also, end of day. All right, so they forget to clock off time and attendance at the end of day or clock off their work orders at the end of day either. There's an auto clock off in time and attendance. So what it'll do is it'll auto clock them off when they forget, and it will also clock them off their work orders that they've been on, including batched work orders. So it'll take their time into the auto clock off feature. The other thing this has helped us with is now you can capture overtime rates on work orders. If you want to catch actual time or actual rates on work orders, this has actually helped us so we can get our actual cost. The other thing this has really helped us with is getting standard hours onto our bill of materials. The problem we were having is with users not clocking in and out correctly on work orders was getting standard hours right. They would waver between tasks, waver between work orders, things like that. This helps us to get a good, reliable data out of the system. And lastly, this helps us to easily capture unallocated work order time. You know, was somebody really just standing around for 15 or 20 minutes, or did they just forget to clock off a work order? What this has allowed us to do is reduce our unallocated work order time by over 30%. So for accounting, they loved it. For the guys on the shop floor, they hate it, right? Because now everybody can see everything they did throughout the whole day. You know, where was their time? So here's what this has helped us to do now that we're getting good standard times in there. We're getting a factor of our status days and standard hours. So how we status work orders through the shop is by work order statuses, and we put standard days against those statuses. So what we have running here is these are screens on our shop floor, and they're in each department. And these screens actually show, if they're in red, that we're already past the actual standard status days or the standard hours it takes for that particular task. And I'll show you in a minute how we put the standard hours on these. How I do this is two ways. Easily, for those of you that aren't technically savvy companies or don't have an IT department, a great utility is called Logicity. Logicity is basically a crystal viewer. It's a free crystal viewer. There is a purchased version, but the free one is being used in our case here. It's a free crystal viewer that also has a scheduler in it. So you can actually schedule crystal reports to dump to files, dump to email, dump to, in this case, HTML pages. So what we do here is we use this scheduler to run a crystal across the quantum database, dumps this file to HTML, and then it basically just refreshes the page using, of course, the Windows scheduler built in, refreshes that web page every so many hours, and just displays the status is up to date. So this free utility, I've put a link to it at the end of the presentation in case you want to take a look at the free Logicity utility. The other thing we do and what we've moved towards, you guys have already heard today, EPCOR do the BI through SAP. You've heard STS do ASP. We actually use another solution. We use SharePoint throughout our facility for our intranet pages and other sites. So we've used, there's a bunch of free utilities out there, a SharePoint to Oracle connector. And we use a SharePoint to Oracle connector, and basically all you do with these connectors is take your SQL directly from your Crystal, dump it into the SharePoint connector, SharePoint to Oracle connector, and it basically displays in table format the Crystal report in SharePoint. So it'll generate into your SharePoint pages the Crystal table. You are limited to just tables with that, though. You cannot do charts or anything like that currently. And the connector, there's some of the free connectors, some of the more expensive ones, you can do some additional functions. So how do we get standard hours in there? Currently, we use a generic skill, as you can see or not see on the bottom down there. A generic skill, and to each task we assigned a standard hour in the master router template for that particular task. So if this particular task, preliminary inspection, as you can see here, our standard hour should be 1 down there, which is according to our template in the master router. Then you can see at the top right our standard hours versus our labor hours, and so we have a variance. So in this case, the screen that you just saw before would go red because we have a labor variance against our standard labor hours. One of the new functionalities actually Quantum's built in master routers that we've also starting to take advantage of is now you can apply manuals to master routers for your work orders. So if you're using master router templates, you can apply the manual in the master router template. So you can see the editing manual screen I've got up here. What it also allows you to do is put the verification date and review date so that if a template is applied to a particular part number, a manual that is applied to a part number, it will not apply that manual if it is past its next review date. Okay. And then this is how you would view those in the manual. So once you apply them in your template and you want to see your attached manuals, you can just do global and work order attached manuals, and it will show you what manuals are attached to that particular template, so that if you're moving towards paperless, here's a way to get your manuals into the system and on your BOM templates. That's all I have. You guys have any questions, I'll be able to answer those. Here's a couple of the links I was talking about. Go to Q Group, hit the forum, and ask any questions. Does anybody have any questions? Quiet's good. All right, thank you guys.